Chair thanks the gentlelady and now recognizes the ranking member of the full committee, Mr. Waxman, for 5 minutes.
Thank you very much, Mr. Chairman. Well, the Republicans are gleeful, and they're happy to admit that. If they're gleeful, it's because they want to repeal the Affordable Care Act and this particular provision, which attempts to deal with the issues of long-term care. A lot of people around the country don't realize that if they have health insurance, even Medicare, it doesn't pay for their assistance when they need what's called long-term care. And if they repeal the Class Act, they will have the following status quo continued. Right now, over 10 million Americans are in need of some form of long-term care, and this number is expected to increase to 15 million by 2020. 7 in 10 people in the country will need help with basic daily living activities at some point in their lives because of a functional disability. The cost of long-term care is astronomical. The average nursing home bill currently stands in excess of $70,000 a year. Monthly charges for home health services averages out at $1,800. Private health insurance, which my Republican colleague says is the way to solve the problem, well, those private insurance policies often are too expensive or difficult to purchase. As a result, less than 10% of the population holds these policies. By far and away, the largest spender for long-term care comes through the Medicaid program. In fiscal year 2010 alone, the combined federal and state price tag for these services was some $120 billion. That's a publicly financed program. So the Republicans would allow this program that's publicly financed to be the only hope for seniors that can't afford a policy to cover them for their long-term care needs. They started off this year by saying, we want to repeal the Affordable Care Act, and then we'll replace it. We've never heard what their replacement is. They have no idea how to deal with this problem, only to tear down the attempts to make the problem more manageable for the millions of Americans who face the dilemma of how to pay for their long-term care or the long-term care costs of their family. Well, it was for this problem that Congressman Pallone and Congressman Dingell and Senator Kennedy worked to establish an effort to meet the long-term care needs of our elderly and disabled citizens and their families, as well as to provide fiscal relief to the Medicaid program. The Community Living Assistance Services and Supports Initiative, which is the CLASS program, was made part of the Affordable Care Act. This represented the first real attempt at the national level to tackle the country's long-term care puzzle. And it's eluded us for decades because of the complexity and the expensive price tag. We should not lose sight of all this, even as the program struggles to get off the ground. Now, no doubt the CLASS program is not crafted perfectly. No piece of legislation is, especially one that is as novel and as unique as CLASS. Everyone acknowledges that, but regrettably, Republicans have called this hearing today to dwell on the problems that have stymied implementation of CLASS, not how to fix those problems to deliver the promising future that could and should lie ahead for the CLASS program. 10 days ago, Secretary Sebelius announced she is putting CLASS on hold. That's because of unintended flaws in the statutory authority. She feels she could not, at this time, fully implement the law. I find that disappointing. But until she finds a path forward, the action she's taken is the responsible thing to do, fiscally and otherwise. But calling for a timeout is not the equivalent of throwing in the towel, as Republicans would have the public believe. Contrary to the Republic title of this hearing, CLASS has not been canceled. Rather, it simply stands in recess. The Republicans complain we're ignoring the truth. Well, they're ignoring the truth of the plight of millions of people to finance their long-term care. They talk about the financial disaster. What about the financial disaster for those families facing this issue? Recipe for disaster. Doing nothing and repealing the Class Act is a recipe for disaster. They talk about over-promising and under-delivery. They've promised to repeal and replace, and they've never told us what they would do. All they've done is pass a law that would make the Medicare program not a guarantee, but something that may be available in the future, but for the most people it may not. I want to put all this in perspective and look forward to the hearing today.